This is a really interesting story, I think, this one. We've all been there, I think, all parents, when you've had to wrangle a kid. Tony was talking about it just before, wrangling a kid into a car seat. Well, this is very interesting. We all use these car seats, but we're not using them correctly. And they are very dangerous. Dr. Julie Brown joins us. She's a senior research fellow at NeuRA, which is Neuro Research Australia, and she has had a look at car seats. She's worried that we're not using them properly, and she thinks she's got a solution. Good morning, Julie.
Hi, Wendy. How are you going?
Good, thank you. Tell us about the study, firstly. What did you find?
Well, look, the thing is that we really do know the most effective way to keep kids safe in cars is to use a restraint. But really, to get the best possible protection in a crash, they need to be used correctly. And we know that, something like 50% of kids, whenever they travel in a car, will have some errors in how they're using them. Some are minor, some are more serious. But we also know that parents are trying to do the right thing, and they're using instructions. 90% of them that we've spoken to have said, yeah, we do look at the instructions, but they're still getting it wrong. So what we've been trying to do is to find a way to make it easier for people to get it right. And so we started looking at the instructions, and historically the instructions that come with the restraints, they're largely regulated through product standards, and the requirements in the product standards have been written historically by groups of experts and manufacturers sitting around a table. But we know in other areas of health that the gold standard for producing information for consumers is to actually involve those consumers in the development of the materials.
Okay.
So that's basically what we've done is we've got parents and carers and people that use restraints to help us develop the instructions.
I'm sorry if I laugh.
It's so simple.
It is just ridiculous. Yeah. Why wouldn't you get a couple of, parents around the table and say,
So they've just been too complicated in the past, have they? Is that basically it?
So I think that basically people haven't been able to understand them. And what we found in the lab is that there's a really critical relationship, not surprisingly, between comprehension of the instructions and getting it right. And so if we can focus on increasing the comprehension of the materials, then we're going to reduce errors. And that's exactly what we've found in our lab study. But what we're doing now is actually we're taking it out into the real world and conducting a really big field-based randomised controlled trial to see if this actually really makes a difference in the real world. Because, even though parents tell us, 90% of them tell us that they use the instructions, we don't know for sure that they actually do. And we don't know in everyday use, if you move the restraint in and out of your car to your husband's car to your mother's car, whether that information that's in the instructions and on the restraint is actually going to help. So our lab results are really, really promising. Yeah. We know that if we can increase comprehension in the lab, we reduce errors. And now we're at the point where we're testing it in the field to see if in real-world use, if this is going to make a difference that we hope that it will.
Yeah, Julie, I guess people listening who have child restraints, I know I've wrangled with them in the past, but we're probably wondering what are the most common mistakes? What do we do wrong most of the time?
Well, basically anything you can think of is what happens.
Okay. But are there really regular ones?
Yeah, the most common ones are things to do with the, in child seats that have the internal harness, is not getting that harness system tight enough, or even kids when they're travelling around in the car taking their arms out because it's not tight enough, and in booster seats, kids putting the seatbelt under their arms. And these kinds of things really have a negative impact on the way that the restraint's going to work in a crash. And also using the top tether strap, which a lot of people don't know what I'm talking about when I say the top tether strap, but it's that bit of webbing that goes from the top of the restraint to the car, to the parcel shelf or behind the seat. And all of these little things are actually really important to how the restraint will work.
Yeah. Right, well, we've got John with us who's got a query for you, Julie, and we're with Dr. Julie Brown. She's a Senior Research Fellow at NeuRA, which is a Neuroscience Research Australia. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, good morning. It's just the practicality of what you're talking about. I do understand having easier instructions is going to be very viable, but the products are manufactured overseas, and we've had the same problem in our industry. The products manufactured overseas, the instructions are written and packed into that product overseas, yet maybe not co-checked by a English first language speaker. But how are you going to influence it here? Because the packs come in sealed, you go into your retailer and buy the sealed pack. How are we going to have...
Well, one of the important things to remember about child restraints in Australia, regardless of where they're made, they have to pass a very, very stringent product standard, the Australian standard, to be able to be sold on the market. And that standard does include requirements related to the instructions. So they are checked before they're allowed to be sold on the Australian market. And so the instructions that we're getting at the moment are approved to that standard. And really, I think what our work is saying is that maybe we need to relook at what we're requiring in that standard, possibly, to make sure that they're more easily comprehended. But I think the other important thing is that the instructions are only one side of the equation, and the other really important thing is the design of the restraints. You know, everybody who's used them knows how tricky they can be, and really what we need is restraints that are designed so that it's actually difficult to use them incorrectly instead of easy to use them incorrectly. And so other parts of the work we're doing going forward is actually looking at the design as well.
Good points. Hey, John, thanks for the call this morning.
No worries, thank you.
And
cheers.
Thank you as well, Julie, for dropping by and giving us the lowdown on that one.
Okay, no worries.
Thank you. And I guess you would be saying finally, look, if you are putting in one of these seats, really take the time over it.